Most people think yogurt is one of the safest foods in the grocery store. It sits right there in the healthy section. Doctors recommend it. Parents put it in their kids' lunchboxes. Fitness influencers spoon it into bowls and call it clean eating. But what if I told you that some of the most popular yogurt brands in America are barely yogurt at all anymore? That behind the friendly packaging and probiotic buzzwords, many of these products have quietly turned into ultra-processed sugar desserts with a health halo slapped on the front. I went through ingredient lists, nutrition panels, consumer complaints, and food labeling rules. And once you see what's actually inside some of these tubs, you'll never look at yogurt the same way again. Let's start with one almost every American has eaten. Yoplait is one of those brands that feels untouchable. It's been around forever. Bright colors, fruit on the bottom, commercials that practically scream healthy lifestyle. For decades, Yoplait positioned itself as the friendly, everyday yogurt for families. But when you stop looking at the marketing and start looking at the label, the illusion falls apart fast. Many popular Yoplait varieties contain more sugar per serving than a glazed donut. And not naturally occurring milk sugar, added sugar, the kind that spikes blood sugar and crashes your energy an hour later. Some fruit-flavored cups hover around 18 to 20 grams of sugar in a single small serving. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 4 to 5 teaspoons of added sugar in something marketed as a health food. What makes this worse is how the sweetness is delivered. Instead of relying on real fruit for flavor, many Yoplait products use fruit purees combined with added sugars, flavorings, and thickeners to simulate richness. The texture feels creamy, but that creaminess isn't coming from fat or fermentation. It's engineered. Modified food starch, gelatin, and stabilizers do the heavy lifting, while the actual yogurt base plays a supporting role. Consumers have noticed. If you read reviews, a common complaint isn't just too sweet, but artificial. People describe flavors that taste candy-like, with an aftertaste that doesn't resemble dairy at all. That's not accidental. When sugar becomes the dominant flavor, subtle yogurt tang disappears. Yoplait isn't alone in this, but it's a perfect example of how a brand can ride decades of trust while quietly drifting away from what yogurt is supposed to be. Which brings us to a brand that markets itself as the smarter, more modern alternative. Dannon is a masterclass in health marketing. Words like light, fit, probiotic, and balanced are everywhere. The packaging is calmer than Yoplait's, more adult, more wellness-focused. But when you zoom in on many of their flavored and reduced fat lines, you start seeing the same pattern in a slightly different costume. The biggest issue here is the trade-off Dannon makes to achieve low calories and low fat. When fat goes down, something has to replace it to keep people coming back. That something is usually sugar, sweeteners, or texture-boosting additives. Some Dannon Light products use artificial sweeteners alongside added sugars, creating a sweetness profile that hits fast and hard but doesn't satisfy. Then there's the probiotic story. Dannon heavily promotes live cultures, especially in lines like Activia. But the reality is that not all probiotics are created equal, and not all of them survive processing or long shelf lives in meaningful amounts. The presence of probiotics on a label doesn't automatically make a yogurt healthy if the rest of the product is working against your metabolism. Many consumers report that these yogurts feel hollow. You eat one, and you're hungry again 30 minutes later. That's not a coincidence. Low fat, low protein, high sweetness is a recipe for short-lived satiety. It's yogurt designed to look good on a nutrition label, not to actually nourish you. Dannon isn't selling poison, but it is selling an idea of health that doesn't quite match reality. And for people trying to eat better, that mismatch matters. Chobani built its reputation on Greek yogurt, thick, high protein, strained. For a while, it genuinely helped reset what Americans expected yogurt to be. Then came the Flip line, and everything changed. Chobani Flip is marketed as fun, indulgent, and balanced. Creamy yogurt on one side, crunchy toppings on the other. Cookies, candies, chocolate bits. The idea is that you get the best of both worlds. But nutritionally, Flip products sit much closer to dessert than breakfast. Once you dump the toppings in, sugar skyrockets. Some Flip varieties push well past 20 grams of sugar per serving, and a significant portion of that doesn't come from milk or fruit. It comes from candy-like inclusions coated in sugar, oils, and flavorings. The yogurt base itself is often non-fat or low-fat, which means the richness comes less from dairy and more from contrast with sweetness. That's why the Flips feel exciting at first bite and unsatisfying soon after. You're eating stimulation, not nourishment. What's interesting is how many people buy these believing they're making a healthier dessert choice. And that's exactly the trap. Compared to ice cream, it seems virtuous. Compared to real yogurt, it's not even close. Chobani Flip isn't pretending to be boring health food, but it benefits from the reputation of Greek yogurt while selling something fundamentally different. And once you notice that, you start seeing the same strategy repeated across the aisle. Oikos Remix leans hard into indulgence. Chocolate pieces, cookie crumbles, sweet drizzles. And again, the word Greek does a lot of heavy lifting. But here's the thing. Traditional Greek yogurt became popular because it was simple. Milk, cultures, time. Remix flips that on its head. The problem with Oikos Remix isn't just sugar, although there's plenty of it. The problem is that it turns yogurt into a delivery system for processed add-ins. Once those toppings are mixed in, the nutritional profile looks far more like a snack food than a fermented dairy product. Many remix varieties are non-fat, which should immediately raise a red flag. Removing fat makes yogurt cheaper and extends shelf life, but it also strips away the component that slows digestion and keeps blood sugar stable. What replaces it is sweetness and texture enhancers. People often report that remix yogurts feel exciting but oddly empty. They're fun to eat, but they don't actually leave you feeling fueled. That's the hallmark of ultra-processed foods, designed for mouthfeel, not satisfaction. At this point in the list, a pattern should be emerging, and it becomes even clearer with the next brand. The Greek Gods brand feels premium the moment you see it. Dark packaging, mythology references, words like traditional, authentic, and rich. It signals indulgence, but in a cultured, old-world way. The problem is that once you strip away the branding, what you're left with isn't ancient or traditional at all. Many Greek gods flavors rely heavily on added sweeteners, including honey and cane sugar, layered on top of already sweetened fruit preparations. On paper, honey sounds wholesome. In practice, nutritionally, it behaves almost identically to sugar once it hits your bloodstream. When combined with fruit concentrates and flavorings, the total sugar load climbs fast. Another issue is texture manipulation. Greek Gods yogurts are famously thick, but that thickness doesn't come solely from straining. Stabilizers and cream additions play a role, creating a dessert-like mouthfeel that masks how sweet the product really is. You don't taste sharp fermentation, you taste smoothness and sweetness first, which is exactly the point. Consumer feedback often describes these yogurts as too rich or more like pudding than yogurt. That's not accidental. The brand intentionally blurs the line between yogurt and dessert while still living in the yogurt aisle, benefiting from its healthy reputation. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a treat. The issue is when a product positions itself as a wholesome fermented food while delivering something far closer to a sugary dairy dessert. That confusion is what keeps people stuck, thinking they're eating well when they're not. If yogurt marketing had a case study in how to normalize sugar for kids, it would be Go-Gurt. For years, it's been sold as a fun, portable snack for children. Tubes you can freeze, bright colors, cartoon energy, and parents often feel good buying it because, after all, it's yogurt, right? The reality is uncomfortable. Go-Gurt contains more added sugar than many kids' desserts. The yogurt itself is highly processed, low in protein, and heavily sweetened to appeal to young taste buds that are still being trained. This isn't fermented dairy teaching kids to appreciate tangy, real food. It's sugar delivery in a dairy costume. The texture is telling. Go-Gurt is smooth, uniform, and squeezable because it's been engineered that way. Stabilizers, gums, and thickeners ensure it behaves more like frosting than yogurt. That consistency makes it easy to eat fast and easy to overconsume. What's most troubling is the long-term effect. When kids grow up associating yogurt with candy-level sweetness, plain yogurt tastes bad to them later. The palate adapts. Real food becomes boring. That's not an accident. That's product design. Go-Gurt doesn't fail because it's fun. It fails because it uses the language of health to sell something that works against developing healthy habits. At this point, you might be thinking, the problem is just sugar. But sugar is only part of the story. The real issue is how modern yogurt is engineered to look, feel, and taste consistent while cutting costs and extending shelf life. One of the most common tools is the use of stabilizers and thickeners. Ingredients like modified cornstarch, gelatin, guar gum, and carrageenan appear again and again. They create thickness without fermentation, smoothness without fat, and stability over months in cold storage. Carrageenan deserves special attention. It's derived from red seaweed and sounds natural, but research has raised concerns about its effects on gut health, particularly in sensitive individuals. Some studies suggest it may trigger inflammation in the digestive tract. While regulatory agencies still allow its use, many people report bloating, discomfort, or digestive upset after consuming products that contain it regularly. Another trap is low-fat labeling. When yogurt is stripped of fat, it loses flavor and satiety. To compensate, manufacturers add sugar, sweeteners, or flavor enhancers. The result is a product that looks virtuous on the front but behaves poorly in the body. Then there's fruit. Real fruit in yogurt is rare. What's more common are fruit preparations, cooked mixtures of fruit, sugar, and stabilizers designed to stay uniform and sweet. These preparations can contain more sugar than the yogurt itself. Understanding these traps matters because they show that the issue isn't one bad brand. It's a system that rewards cost-cutting and flavor engineering over real fermentation. So how do you tell if you're looking at real yogurt or just a well-disguised dairy dessert? Start with the ingredient list. Real yogurt is boring on paper. It usually starts with milk and ends with live cultures. If you see gums, starches, gelatin, or long scientific names doing the work, that thickness didn't come from fermentation. It was manufactured. Next, look at sugar. Plain yogurt will always have some natural sugar from milk, but when a small cup starts creeping toward dessert-level sweetness, that's no longer a health food. Then check the fat. Whole milk yogurt is often the more honest option, because fat carries flavor and keeps you full. When fat disappears, something else always takes its place, and it's rarely something better. Finally, pay attention to taste. Real yogurt has a slight tang. It doesn't need to be exciting or candy sweet. If it tastes like dessert, your body isn't being nourished. It's being entertained. Fage Total is not exciting, and that's exactly why it works. When you open a tub of plain Fage Total, there's no burst of artificial aroma, no bright fruit layer, no sweetness hitting your tongue immediately. What you get instead is thick, tangy yogurt that tastes like milk that's been properly fermented. The ingredient list is short and boring in the best way possible: milk and live cultures. That's it. No stabilizers, no gums, no sugar added to make it more palatable to the mass market. The thickness comes from straining, not additives. The flavor comes from fermentation, not flavorings. Fage also delivers protein in a way that feels natural. You don't need to market it aggressively because the texture and satiety speak for themselves. People who switch to Fage often report something interesting. They eat less yogurt overall, but feel more satisfied. That's a sign of a real food doing its job. It's widely available across the US, which matters. This isn't a niche health store product. It's something people can realistically buy, try, and stick with. And while it may taste intense at first if you're used to sweetened yogurt, that adjustment period is exactly how you reset your palate. If you add fruit to Fage yourself, you control the sweetness. You decide what goes in. That single shift changes yogurt from a product you consume passively into one you actually use intentionally. Siggi's approaches yogurt from a slightly different angle, but the philosophy is similar. Less sugar, fewer ingredients, more emphasis on protein and fermentation. Siggi's Icelandic-style yogurt is thick, filling, and intentionally restrained. The brand built its identity around what it doesn't include. No artificial sweeteners, no high-fructose syrups, no unnecessary stabilizers. Even their flavored varieties tend to contain less sugar than most mainstream competitors. What makes Siggi stand out is how clearly it communicates restraint. The sweetness, when present, feels deliberate instead of overwhelming. The texture feels dense rather than whipped or fluffy, and the flavors don't linger in a synthetic way. Consumers often describe Siggi's as adult yogurt, not because it's pretentious, but because it doesn't try to entertain you. It assumes you're eating yogurt to feel good afterward, not just during the first bite. Like Fage, Siggi's is easy to find in US grocery stores. That accessibility matters. Health advice that requires specialty shopping rarely sticks. Siggi's works because it fits into normal routines without pretending to be something it's not. The yogurt aisle is a perfect example of how modern food marketing works. Products don't get worse overnight. They get slightly cheaper, slightly sweeter, slightly more processed, slowly enough that most people never notice. The packaging stays familiar. The slogans stay comforting. Only the fine print changes. What makes this frustrating isn't that bad yogurt exists. It's that so many people genuinely believe they're making healthy choices when they're not, and that belief is profitable. Once you understand how yogurt is supposed to work, fermentation, simplicity, balance, the entire aisle looks different. You stop being impressed by buzzwords. You stop trusting bright packaging. You start reading labels without fear. And the most important thing is this: you don't need perfection. You just need awareness. Choosing plain yogurt and adding your own ingredients once or twice a week is already a massive upgrade. Swapping one sugary cup for a real one is progress. The yogurt industry won't change unless consumers do. And the moment you stop rewarding sugar dressed up as health, the entire system starts to shift. If this changed how you see yogurt, share it with someone who still thinks fruit on the bottom means healthy. Leave a comment with the brand that shocked you the most. And if you want more breakdowns like this, stay tuned. Because once you learn how to read food for what it really is, you can't unsee it.